What happens when a Hollywood legend with decades of integrity meets a host who thinks fame means he can say anything he wants? In just 46 seconds, a single dismissive comment would ignite a firestorm that turned a morning talk show into an unforgettable showdown, exposing the arrogance behind the cameras and leaving a studio in absolute chaos. The studio lights were blazing hot that morning. Clint Eastwood sat comfortably in the guest chair, looking calm and collected like he always did. He had been through thousands of interviews in his career. This was supposed to be another easy one. Just a quick chat about his latest film project, maybe some stories from the old days, and he would be on his way. Michael Strawn sat across from him with that big smile plastered on his face. Next to him were Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos, both shuffling their note cards and sipping their coffee. The cameras started rolling, and the show went live. "We are so excited to have you here, Clint," Michael said, leaning forward with his elbows on the desk. "I mean, you are a legend, an icon. But I gotta ask, do you ever feel like maybe your time has passed? Like maybe Hollywood has moved on without you?" There was an awkward pause. Robin glanced over at Michael with wide eyes. George shifted in his seat. Clint just stared at Michael for a moment, his jaw tightening slightly. "My time has passed," Clint repeated slowly, his voice low and measured. "What exactly are you trying to say?" "Oh, come on, man. You know what I mean," Michael said, waving his hand dismissively. "The industry is all about younger directors now, fresh voices, new perspectives. Do you ever worry that you are, a little out of touch?" Robin jumped in quickly, trying to smooth things over. "What Michael is trying to say is that you have had such an incredible career spanning so many decades. How do you stay relevant in such a changing industry?" But the damage was already done. Clint's eyes narrowed. "Stay relevant?" he said. "I have been making films longer than some of these so-called fresh voices have been alive. I do not need to stay relevant. I am relevant." Michael laughed, but it was not a friendly laugh. It was condescending, dismissive. Okay, I hear you. But let us be real for a second. Your last few movies did not exactly set the box office on fire, did they? Maybe it is time to let the younger generation take the wheel." George finally spoke up, his voice diplomatic. "Clint, you have always been known for taking risks with your projects. Can you tell us about what drew you to this latest film?" Clint turned to George, grateful for the lifeline. "This film is about integrity," he began. "It is about standing up for what you believe in, even when the whole world is telling you to sit down and be quiet. It is about not letting anyone tell you your voice does not matter anymore." "Integrity, huh?" Michael interrupted, that smug smile still on his face. "That's rich coming from someone who has not had a hit in years. Maybe if you focused less on preaching and more on entertainment, people would actually show up to watch your movies." Robin put her hand on Michael's arm. "Michael, that is not fair." "What?" Michael said, pulling his arm away. "I am just being honest. Someone has to say it." Clint sat back in his chair, his eyes locked on Michael. The studio was so quiet, you could hear the cameras whirring. "Honest?" Clint said, his voice like gravel. "You want to talk about honesty? Let me tell you something about honesty, son. Honesty is not about tearing someone down on live television because you think it makes you look tough. Honesty is about respect, and you clearly do not have any." Michael's smile faded. "Excuse me? I am just doing my job here." "Your job?" Clint said, leaning forward now. "Your job is to interview people, not insult them. There is a difference, and you clearly have not learned it yet." The tension in the studio was thick. Cameramen were zooming in closer. The director in the control room was frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but nobody was listening. This was live television at its most raw and unscripted. George tried to intervene again. "Gentlemen, let us take a breath here. Maybe we can reset and talk about the film itself." But Michael was not backing down. His pride was on the line now, and he could not let it go. Look, Clint, I get it. You are from a different era. Things were different back then. People just nodded and smiled and said nice things. But this is 2025. We do not just sit around and worship celebrities anymore. We ask tough questions. We hold them accountable. Accountable? Clint repeated, his voice getting harder. You keep using that word. I do not think you know what it means. Accountability is about responsibility, about answering for your actions. What actions of mine are you holding me accountable for? Making movies? Telling stories? Contributing to cinema for over 6 decades? Michael shifted in his seat. You know what I mean? No, I really do not, Clint said, his eyes locked on Michael. Because from where I am sitting, it sounds like you are just throwing around buzzwords to justify being rude to a guest. Accountable for what? Clint shot back. For having a career? For making movies that mean something? What exactly am I being held accountable for here? For being irrelevant? Michael said flatly. For pretending like you still matter when everyone has moved on. Robin gasped audibly. Michael, stop. Right now. George put his hand up. This has gone too far. But Michael kept going, fueled by something between arrogance and nervousness. He had started this, and now he felt like he had to finish it. I mean, come on. When was the last time anyone under 30 even knew who you were? When was the last time you did? Something that actually mattered. You are living off a reputation you built decades ago. Michael, Robin said sharply. That is completely inappropriate. But Michael waved her off. What? I am being honest. Somebody has to say it. Hollywood has moved on. The audience has moved on. Maybe it is time for Clint Eastwood to move on too. The studio audience let out a collective gasp. Even the crew members were looking at each other in disbelief. This was not just a tough interview anymore. This was a public humiliation attempt, broadcast live to millions. Clint remained still for a moment, his face unreadable. Then, very slowly and deliberately, he stood up. He reached down and unclipped the small microphone from his collar, the tiny movement somehow carrying enormous weight. The entire studio held its breath. Every eye was on him. I do not need to sit here and listen to this, he said calmly. I have been in this business for over 60 years. I have won Academy Awards. I have directed films that will be remembered long after people forget your name. And I am not going to sit here and let some talk show host who used to play football tell me I do not matter. Michael stood up too, his face flushed. Oh, here we go. The big tough guy routine. You think you can just walk out of here? I do not think anything, Clint said, placing the microphone on the chair. I am walking out of here. George stood up now, his hands raised. Clint, please, let us just take a moment. I have taken enough moments, Clint said. I came here to talk about my film, to have a civil conversation. Instead, I got ambushed by someone who thinks being rude is the same as being interesting. Robin was on her feet too, her voice pleading. Clint, please do not go. Michael did not mean what he said. Did you, Michael? Michael crossed his arms. I meant every word. The studio erupted in murmurs. Crew members were whispering to each other. The producers were frantically talking into their headsets. Clint started walking toward the exit. Where do you think you are going? Michael called after him, standing up from his chair. We are in the middle of a live show. You cannot just walk out. Clint stopped and turned around, his movements measured and controlled. The look on his face could have frozen fire. Then I guess you better figure out what to do with the rest of your airtime, he said, his voice cutting through the studio like a blade. Maybe you can spend it explaining to your viewers why you thought it was a good idea to disrespect a guest on live television. Or better yet, maybe you can explain to them why you think tearing people down makes you a good interviewer. Michael walked around the desk, his hands gesturing wildly. Disrespect? You want to talk about disrespect. You come on my show with this holier-than-thou attitude, acting like you are above criticism, like you are above everyone else, like we should all just be grateful you showed up. I never said any of that, Clint replied calmly, but there was fire behind his eyes. I came here to have a professional conversation. I came here to talk about a film I poured my heart into. Instead, you decided to use me as a punching bag to prove how edgy and bold you think you are. Robin was on her feet now, her voice pleading and desperate. Please, both of you, can we just calm down? Clint, Michael did not mean any of this. Did you, Michael? Michael crossed his arms defiantly. I meant every single word. Every single word. The crew was in chaos now. Camera operators did not know where to point their cameras. The director was screaming into headsets. Producers were running onto the set from every direction. But the cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of the disaster unfolding in real time. Your show? Clint said, his voice rising for the first time, real anger finally breaking through his controlled exterior. This is not your show, Michael. You are just a host. You sit in a chair and read questions off a card. You are replaceable. There are 100 people who could do what you do. And based on how you have handled this interview, based on the complete lack of professionalism you have shown today, I would not be surprised if you get replaced real soon. Because networks do not keep hosts who drive away the very people audiences want to see. Michael's face went red. Oh, that is rich coming from you. At least I am still relevant. At least people still want to hear what I have to say. Do they? Clint asked pointedly. Is that why you have to manufacture controversy? Is that why you have to attack your guests? Because you are so interesting on your own? George moved between them, his voice firm but controlled. Okay, that is enough. Both of you need to calm down right now. This is getting out of hand. It got out of hand the moment he opened his mouth, Clint said, pointing at Michael. I have done thousands of interviews. Thousands. I have sat across from journalists who asked tough questions, who challenged me, who pushed me. But they did it with respect. They did it like professionals. This is just ego. This is just a man who thinks that being mean makes him important. But Clint was done. I am calm, he said. I am also leaving. I have better things to do than waste my time here. Robin tried one more time. Clint, please. We can start over. We can talk about your film properly. Clint looked at her, and his expression softened slightly. Robin, you are a class act. You always have been. But I cannot sit here with someone who has no idea what it means to treat people with dignity. Michael scoffed loudly, throwing his hands up. Dignity? Give me a break. You are just mad because I called you out. You are mad because someone finally had the guts to say what everyone else is thinking. That you are past your prime. That your best days are behind you. That you should probably just retire and let the new generation take over. Called me out on what? Clint demanded, his voice steady but powerful. On being old. On not having a #1 movie last week. On not fitting into whatever narrow definition of success you think matters. Those are not crimes, Michael. Those are just facts of life. Everyone gets older. Everyone has ups and downs in their career. But attacking someone for their age, for their legacy, for everything they have accomplished, that says a lot more about you than it does about me. It says you are insecure. It says you need to tear others down to feel big. Oh, please, Michael said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You think you are so special because you made a few westerns 50 years ago? Because you won some awards back when my parents were kids? That does not give you a free pass to come on my show and lecture me. A few westerns? Clint said, shaking his head slowly, almost in disbelief. You really have no idea what you are talking about, do you? You have no idea about the films I have made, the stories I have told, the impact they have had. and that is fine. You do not have to know. But what you should know, what any decent person should know, is how to treat a guest with basic human respect. George put his hand on Michael's shoulder. Michael, maybe we should go to commercial. No, Michael said, shrugging him off. I want to hear this. Go ahead, Clint. Tell us all how great you are. Clint took a deep breath. I do not need to tell anyone how great I am. My work speaks for itself. But what I will tell you is this. When you have been around, as long as I have, you learn that respect is not something you demand. It is something you earn. And you, Michael, have not earned anything here today except a reputation for being disrespectful. The crew was scrambling now. Someone was shouting about cutting to commercial. A producer was running onto the set, but the cameras were still rolling, capturing every word. Michael pointed his finger at Clint. You know what your problem is? You cannot handle the truth. The truth is that nobody cares about your movies anymore. The truth is that you are washed up. Robin grabbed Michael's arm. Michael, that is enough. Stop it right now. But Michael pulled away from her. No, Robin. Someone needs to say it. He comes on here acting like he is doing us a favor, like we should all bow down to him. Well, I am not bowing down to anyone. Clint's voice was steady, but there was steel in it. I never asked you to bow down. I never asked for special treatment. I asked for basic respect. The same respect I would show you if our positions were reversed. But clearly, that is too much to expect from you. Clearly, common decency is beyond your capabilities. Michael stepped closer, his finger pointing at Clint. You know what? Good. Leave. Nobody is going to miss you anyway. Your time is over, old man. Done. Finished. This industry does not need you anymore. Robin grabbed Michael's arm hard, pulling him back. Michael, stop talking right now. You are making this so much worse. But Michael jerked his arm away from her. No, Robin. I am tired of pretending. I am tired of acting like these old celebrities are still relevant just because they used to be famous. He needs to hear the truth. The truth, Clint said quietly, but his voice carried across the entire studio. You want to talk about truth? Here is a truth for you. In 50 years, people will still be watching my films. They will still be studying them in film schools. They will still be inspired by them. But you, in 50 years, nobody is going to remember this show. Nobody is going to remember your name. They are going to remember this moment, though. They are going to remember the time a talk show host was so desperate for attention that he attacked a legend on live television. George had his hands up, trying desperately to maintain some control. Clint, Michael, we really need to go to commercial. Please. But Clint was already walking away, his decision made. You do not need to go to commercial on my account, he said over his shoulder, his voice calm again, almost eerily calm. I am done here. Done with this interview. Done with this disrespect. Just done. Michael called after him, his voice loud and hostile. That is right. Run away. Just like you always do in your movies. The tough guy act only works on screen, Clint. In real life, you are just another has-been who cannot handle criticism. Clint stopped one more time at the edge of the stage. He turned around slowly, and the entire studio went silent again. The silence was deafening, heavy with anticipation. You could have heard a pin drop. You know what the difference is between me and you, Michael? When I leave this studio, I go home to a career I am proud of. A body of work that means something. A legacy that will outlast both of us. What do you have? A talk show where you insult guests and call it journalism? Where you mistake cruelty for courage? That is not a legacy. That is just noise. Michael's face was red now, veins visible on his neck. Get out of here. Nobody wants you here anyway. I was already leaving, Clint said calmly, his composure a stark contrast to Michael's rage. You just could not help yourself, could you? You had to get one more dig in. You had to try to get the last word. Well, here is a dig for you, and I want you to really hear this. When your contract is up and they are looking for someone to replace you, and trust me, they will be looking, they are not going to remember you for your interviews. They are not going to remember you for any insightful questions or memorable moments. They are going to remember you for moments like this. For the time you ran off one of the most respected figures in Hollywood because you could not control your ego, because you thought being provocative was more important than being professional. Robin had tears streaming down her face now. Clint, please do not leave like this. We can fix this. We can start over. Clint looked at her one more time. Robin, take care of yourself. You deserve better than this. Then he looked at George. George, you too. You are both better than this. And then he looked back at Michael one final time. And you, Michael, you have a lot of growing up to do. I hope you figure it out before you burn every bridge you have got. With that, Clint Eastwood walked off the set of Good Morning America. The crew stood frozen. The producers were shouting into their headsets. Robin had her face in her hands. George was staring at Michael in disbelief. Michael stood there in the middle of the stage, his chest heaving, his fists clenched. Good riddance, he muttered. But nobody was listening to him anymore. The camera operators were talking amongst themselves. The sound technicians were shaking their heads. Even the studio audience, who had been watching in stunned silence, started murmuring. George finally spoke, his voice tight with controlled anger. Michael, what were you thinking? What? Michael said defensively. I was just being honest. Honest? George said. You were being cruel. There is a difference. Robin looked up, her mascara slightly smudged. Do you have any idea what you just did? That was Clint Eastwood. He is a legend. So what? Michael said. Legends do not get a free pass to be jerks. He was not being a jerk, Robin said, her voice rising. You were. From the very first question, you were attacking him. I was doing my job, Michael insisted. Your job is not to attack our guests, George said firmly. Your job is to have conversations, to make them feel welcome, to give them a platform to share their stories. You did none of that. Michael looked around at his co-hosts, at the crew, at the producers who were now storming onto the set. You are all overreacting, he said. A producer in a headset walked up to Michael. We need to talk. Now. Michael followed the producer off the set, still trying to defend himself. I was just keeping it real, he was saying. Someone has to hold these people accountable. Robin and George were left standing there. Robin wiped her eyes. I cannot believe that just happened. Neither can I, George said quietly. Neither can I. The stage manager came over. We are going to cut to a pre-taped segment. We will figure out what to do after that. Robin nodded, but she was still shaken. That was awful, she whispered. Absolutely awful. George put his hand on her shoulder. I know. Out in the hallway, Clint Eastwood was walking toward the exit. A few crew members tried to apologize to him, but he just nodded politely and kept moving. He did not look angry anymore. He just looked tired. A young production assistant ran up to him. Mr. Eastwood, I am so sorry about what happened in there. That was completely unprofessional. Clint stopped and looked at the young man. It is not your fault, son, but thank you. For what it is worth, the production assistant said, I think you handled that with a lot of class. More class than he deserved. Clint gave him a small smile. Well, when you have been around as long as I have, you learn that some battles are not worth fighting, but you also learn when to walk away. I hope you will still come back someday, the production assistant said. When things are different. Clint patted him on the shoulder. Maybe. We will see. And with that, Clint Eastwood walked out of the Good Morning America studio and into the cold morning air. Behind him, the chaos continued. Producers were arguing. Michael was defending his actions. Robin and George were trying to figure out how to salvage the rest of the show. But Clint did not look back. He had said everything he needed to say. He had stood his ground. He had demanded respect. And when he did not get it, he walked away. Back in the studio, the show went to commercial. The crew was buzzing with conversation. Nobody could believe what had just happened. A live television interview had turned into a full-blown confrontation, and one of Hollywood's most respected actors had walked off the set. George sat back down at the desk, running his hands through his hair. "How are we supposed to follow that?" he said, to no one in particular. Robin sat down next to him, still visibly upset. "I do not know. I just do not know." The stage manager counted them down. "We are back in 10 seconds. George and Robin composed themselves as best they could. The cameras came back on. "Welcome back to Good Morning America," George said, his voice professional but strained. "We apologize for that unexpected interruption. We will be moving forward with the rest of our show." Robin nodded, trying to smile. "Up next, we have a segment on holiday recipes that your whole family will love." But the damage was done. The interview with Clint Eastwood had gone horribly wrong. A simple promotional appearance had turned into a disaster, and Michael Strawn, the host who thought he could say whatever he wanted, had learned a hard lesson. Or had he? In his dressing room, Michael was pacing back and forth. The producer was standing there with his arms crossed. "Do you understand the magnitude of what just happened out there?" the producer said. "I was just being real with him," Michael said. "Everyone is always kissing up to these celebrities. Someone needs to challenge them." "Challenge them?" the producer said incredulously. "You insulted him. From the very first question, you were antagonistic. What did you think was going to happen?" Michael threw his hands up. "I thought he could handle it. He is Clint Eastwood. He is supposed to be tough." "There is a difference between being tough and being disrespected," the producer said. "You crossed a line, Michael. A big line." "Oh, come on," Michael said. "Everyone is going to forget about this by tomorrow." The producer shook his head. "No, Michael, they are not. This was live television. Millions of people just watched you run off one of the most iconic actors in American cinema. This is not going away." Michael sat down on the couch in his dressing room. For the first time, he looked uncertain. "So, what happens now?" "Now?" the producer said. "Now we do damage control. And you better hope that Clint Eastwood is a forgiving man. Because if he is not, this could get very ugly for you." Michael put his head in his hands. "I was just trying to make good television." "Good television is not about humiliating your guests," the producer said. "Good television is about connection, about storytelling, about making people feel something. What you did out there, that was not good television. That was a train wreck." Back on the set, Robin and George were doing their best to carry on with the show. But the energy was different. The crew was distracted. The audience was still buzzing about what had happened, and Robin and George kept exchanging glances, both of them clearly shaken by the whole ordeal. During the next commercial break, Robin turned to George. "Do you think he's going to be okay?" she asked quietly. "Clint?" George said. "Yeah, he will be fine. He has been through worse than this. But Michael? I am not so sure." "He really crossed the line this time," Robin said. "I have never seen anything like that." "Neither have I," George agreed. "And I have been doing this a long time." The stage manager called out, "Back in 5. Robin and George straightened up, putting their professional faces back on. But inside, they were both still reeling from what they had witnessed. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood was already in his car, heading back to his hotel. He looked out the window at the city passing by. He was not angry anymore. He was just disappointed. Disappointed that a simple interview had turned into such a spectacle. disappointed that respect seemed to be in such short supply these days. His phone buzzed. It was his publicist. "I just saw what happened," the publicist said. "Are you okay?" "I am fine," Clint said. "Just tired." "You handled it perfectly," the publicist said. "You kept your dignity. That is more than I can say for Michael Strawn." "Well," Clint said, "that is his problem, not mine." "Do you want to make a statement?" the publicist asked. "No," Clint said firmly. "I said everything I needed to say in that studio. I am done talking about it." "Fair enough," the publicist said, "but just so you know, people are already talking about this. It is all over social media. And from what I can see, everyone is on your side." Clint smiled, slightly. "That's nice to hear, but it does not really matter. I did what I thought was right. That's all I can do." They said goodbye, and Clint hung up. He leaned back in his seat and closed his eyes. He had been in this business long enough to know that controversies come and go. This would blow over eventually. But the principle of the thing, that mattered to him. Standing up for himself, demanding respect, refusing to be treated poorly, that was what mattered. Back at the studio, the show was wrapping up. George and Robin said their goodbyes to the camera, both of them visibly relieved that the ordeal was almost over. As soon as the cameras cut, Robin let out a long breath. "Thank goodness that is over." George nodded. "One of the longest shows of my life." Michael emerged from his dressing room, looking subdued. He walked over to his co-hosts. "Hey," he said quietly. Robin looked at him, her expression hard. "Hey." "Look," Michael said, "maybe I went a little too far." "A little?" George said, raising his eyebrows. "Okay, a lot," Michael admitted. I do not know. I thought I was making good television." "By attacking a guest?" Robin said. "Michael, that is not good television. That is just mean." "I know," Michael said, and for the first time, he actually looked sorry. "I messed up." "Yes, you did," George said. "And now, we all have to deal with the fallout." Michael nodded slowly. "What do you think is going to happen?" "I do not know," George said honestly. "But I would not be surprised if there are some serious conversations happening in the executive offices right now." The three of them stood there in awkward silence. The crew was packing up around them, everyone avoiding eye contact with Michael. Finally, Robin spoke. "Michael, you need to think about why you did what you did. Because if you do not figure it out, you are going to keep making the same mistakes." "I will," Michael said quietly. "I promise." But as Robin and George walked away, they both wondered if he really would. Michael had always been confident, sometimes too confident. He had a tendency to push boundaries, to say things that others would not. Usually, it made for entertaining television. But today, it had backfired spectacularly. And as the lights dimmed in the studio and the crew finished packing up, one thing was clear. This morning had changed everything. A routine interview had turned into a defining moment. Clint Eastwood had shown what it meant to stand up for yourself with dignity and grace. And Michael Strawn had learned, perhaps too late, that there is a difference between being bold and being disrespectful. The studio was empty now. The cameras were off. The lights were dim. But the impact of what had happened would linger for a long time to come. Because in those 46 seconds, when Michael made that first dismissive comment, he had set in motion a chain of events that no one could have predicted. And somewhere across town, Clint Eastwood was already moving on, his integrity intact, his reputation stronger than ever. Because when you have spent a lifetime earning respect, you do not need to beg for it. And when someone tries to take it from you, you have every right to walk away.